That's nasty. Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you are here. Today's nonsense is in Standard. And we have a viewer deck from a wonderful Poseidenj, who has put together a really interesting Rakdos Modified deck. So we're trying to get aggressive with a couple of different things specifically. First of all, Blade of the Oni. This card, very, very strong. 3/1 Menace for 2 is just fine. That's a good creature. Gets aggressive early and is difficult to block early. You know, you kind of got to trade multiple for it, things like that. But it can also reconfigure to give a creature Menace and make its base power and toughness 5/5. So it can make something into a 5/5 Menace. That's crazy good, right? Then there's also Thundering Raiju, which is a 3/3 haste. Whenever it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, which can be Thundering Raiju, so it can attack as a 4/4 haste if we want. However, then Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju. So if you put the counter on the Raiju itself, well, no extra damage. But if you choose to spread the love around and modify other creatures, not only do they count as modified for Thundering Raiju, but they also, you know, they get to grow forever. So we get to attack easily with Thundering Raiju or whatever. They also can kind of count one another. They can give counters elsewhere if you have multiples, things like that. It's very, very strong. Also true that Rabbit Battery allows things to become modified. Kumano faces Kakkazan, can throw counters around. And then it's also relevant that we have a couple of werewolves here. Not a huge, huge factor in the game, but it is true. We kind of dump our hand relatively early, and being able to give haste and 1/0 is just good. The front side, Reckless Stormseeker, is just strong. Stormcharge Slasher, though, can be really insane. So in the situations where it can flip, this is a very, very powerful thing to be up to. Similarly, the Graveyard Trespasser is just good for aggressive decks, where it's just a 3/3 that gets in a little extra damage for 3. The Ward, discard a card, makes spot removal really, really difficult. It's also aimed at Graveyard Hate, so then it can flip over into a 4/4 that does, you know, more good stuff. So just, you know, strong, powerful creatures in general, and where the werewolf theme can really matter. So is it good enough to win some games? I don't know. Let's find out. All right, folks, here we are up against Chuckwar. Good luck, Chuckwar. And yeah, I think this hand is good enough to keep. We've got our 3 lands, and we're on the draw, which is not great. We prefer to be on the playback quite a bit, but, you know, alas, it is what it is. We do pick up an Agadeem Undercrypt and elect to go that direction for our first land of the turn. Our opponent goes the Spirited Companion to put a card into hand. Now presented with some options. The Rabbit Battery is actually sneakily tempting here, just being able to get out of the board. It not only swings this turn, but also kind of gives us the option to give haste to things on future turns. We would also be playing just a little bit off curve then, but it would be okay. You know, we follow up with Blade of the Oni, equip the Rabbit Battery, things like that, but, you know, whatever. Our opponent goes Professor of Symbology and a Portable Hole, though, kind of really messing up all of our things. Very inconvenient. So now we're presented with a whole bunch of different opportunities as well. Rabbit Batteries and Kumanos and even Blade of the Onis and whatnot, but we elect to just slam a Reckless Stormseeker and see what our opponent has to say. The unfortunate thing is, what they have to say is the Wandering Emperor, and the Wandering Emperor going to exile our creature, gain a little bit of life, cause us to be back into an awkward situation. So we elect to go with Blade of the Oni, Rabbit Battery, equip it so that we can get rid of this stinking Wandering Emperor. Boy, folks, that card can be annoying, can it? Well, Chuckwar gets the turn back, and they elect to go with Virus Beetle. This is really annoying. We discard the Kumano because attacking with the Goldspan Dragon gives us a much, much better chance at victory here. But boy, oh boy, our opponent just has relentless interaction. Jeez Louise, more Portable Holes. Oh boy, and now we're immediately regretting having to, or discarding our Kumano. But it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Trying to decide what to do about this treasure. We could have spent the mana and equipped the Rabbit Battery to the Goldspan Dragon. But At least so far, our opponent has been learning and interacting quite a bit, you know, with portable holes, things like that. So we're afraid they might just be able to get rid of our Goldspan Dragon, so we don't spend the treasure on a relatively frivolous thing like that. And all of our fears come true, unfortunately enough. However, we do now get a Blade of the Oni to come on down, and we're going to attach the Blade of the Oni to the Rabbit Battery. That's right, folks, Rabbit Battery. Now a 5/5 menace. Not so easily blocked now, is it, Chuckwar? Opponent slams an Edgar Charmed Groom, though. And suddenly we're like, well, this stinks, you know? Trying to decide what to do about all this. Eventually we elect to just, yeah, you know what? Let's just get in. Our opponent will have to trade some amount of stuff if they want to kill it. And as a matter of fact, they end up throwing everything in front of it. So we just say, you know what? Okay, we're going to have menacing creatures. Let's just cleanse the rest of your board. Boom, get it all out of here. Opponent can keep their Edgar, and now they have no other board. They do go with Celestis, which is annoying. We've got the day-night cycle already started, so this will give them some amount of control over the day-night cycle, though, and that's pretty annoying. Oh, crud, our opponent attacks with the Edgar. Almost fishy, really. Not, you know, I'm not sure about that at all, you know? As it turns out, no instant speed interaction. They just decide to take infinite amounts of damage. And we decide, okay, how do we lose here? Well, one of the ways we could lose is potentially our opponent having Meat Hook Massacre or something like that, some kind of board sweeper. It's not likely, but equipping the Rabbit Battery onto a creature makes it so our opponent, even if they do sweep the board, now our Rabbit Battery survives, and the Rabbit Battery can either be equipped or just left to attack on its own or something. We would probably want to equip it to the Den of the Bugbear to make it a 4-power attacker and be able to get through the Edgar Charmed Groom, right? Definitely one of those flexibilities with these reconfigure creatures that I think a little bit easy to overlook, right? Opponent elects to invest mana in the Celestis. That not only swaps it from day to night, or I'm sorry, from night to day, but it also allows our opponent to loot and gain a life. Then they don't cast anything, so it goes from night or day to night now, and they do more looting and gain more life. That's decidedly inconvenient. I'm not a fan. But alas, oh my goodness, off the top comes Bloodchief's Thirst. That we are a fan of. And Edgar Charmed Groom goes away. So we fire up the Den of the Bugbear using those treasures, and now our opponent is forced to crack the Field of Ruin. We're not surprised by this. It's been hanging out there. But, you know, it's not impossible that our opponent forgets about it either, right? It's also relevant that even, like, if they do elect to go for that, then even if they had instant speed interaction, they can't fire it off on our creatures, and so they're going to drop to 1. We know that they can at least use the Celestis, swap the day to night, gain a little more life or whatever, but we have a menacing creature. That means they need at least 2... No! Darn it. Here comes the Doomscar. Very inconvenient, but lo and behold, not good enough. All right, folks, here we are up against Bad Hample. Good luck, Bad Hample. Yeah, this hand is underwhelming, but fine. We get to start on a Kumano faces Kakkazan, and we would really like a land. Please, deck, don't betray us. Our opponent doing some life-gaining style shenanigans. Lunarch Veteran and a Prosperous Innkeeper. What you up to, Bad Hample? Looks like going to be just an attack and save the treasure. They do. All right, well. No land. Feels bad. Opponent now access to 4 mana. And Righteous Valkyrie. Okay. Not thrilled about any of this. Righteous Valkyrie currently immune to our removal spell as well. Not great news. Because we don't have a dragon. And so, I mean, it's not technically immune. It would take some amount of damage, but not a meaningful amount. Bad Hample then go... Cleric class? No! And they immediately level it up. Probably wise. And intend to start growing all of these little creatures. Well, we get a Shatterskull Smashing, which is fantastic news. Because it's a land. What to do about it, I'm not sure. It's tough. But we elect to go ahead and try and pressure our opponent. I'm not sure this is correct. But at least it feels like we're playing Magic now. Oh, boy. Just slams a Luminarch Aspirant. Cleric class starts doing work. Suddenly there's a 3/5 Righteous Valkyrie and a 4/4 blocker. I mean, okay. These are things. You know, we've got like the Bloodchief's Thirst, Dragon's Fire line, which is what we go for. There was also another Reckless Stormseeker coming down. Could make things relatively interesting, but that just leaves so much power on the board. I just don't think we win that game. Unfortunately, Bad Hample has just gained so much life and is continuing to gain more that our current life total just too stinking low. Our opponent crashes in. We drop to 3. And we're still stuck on 3 lands. Our opponent's back up to 23 somehow. Does not feel good, but we scoop it up. So, oh well. GG, Bad Hample. GG. All right, folks. We're up against Am. Good luck, Am. Our turn 1, pretty clear. Slammer, Rabbit Battery, and attack. The unfortunate thing about this hand is we're kind of in an aggressive deck, and we have 4 lands. There was justification for throwing it back. I elected not to, just because, you know, the hand does have good stuff going on. You know, a little interaction. We have our Thundering Raiju, the Rabbit Battery stuff. Like, there are good things here, just a little inconvenient. So we do Dragon's Fire away their creature, so that we can keep attacking with the Rabbit Battery, stay aggressive. Our opponent goes with Oni Cult Anvil, which is annoying, but we have a Reckless Stormseeker, so we will get to attack with a 3/3. This is finally a meaningful attacker. Our first couple attacks have been underwhelming at best. But that's okay. Our opponent now, with the Oni Cult Anvil, is beginning to get set up, and we don't like that. Experimental Synthesizer means they are continuing to get set up, and Power Word Kill on our Werewolf. Jeez, please be nice, opponent. Oni Cult Anvil does the thing, and we get down a Thundering Raiju. We are going to put the counter over on Rabbit Battery. This way we can attack with both. Our opponent feels the need to chump because we are being pretty aggressive. And we're down to 2 cards in hand. They have 5. So what they don't want is to die before being able to deploy all the cards in their hand, right? This is reasonable and I think intelligent. They also have the ability to replenish the creature once, you know, the Oni Cult Anvil starts doing its thing. So I think these things are all reasonable. Well, okay, this is inconvenient, but fine. We get to attach the Rabbit Battery on the Oni Cult, or the Blade of the Oni. And we do decide to fire off the Bloodchief's Thirst on the Blood Tithe Harvester. Yep, counter goes on to Thundering Raiju itself. It is now a 4/4. And our opponent took 1 because even though our Blade of the Oni didn't have a counter on it, it was modified, right? The Rabbit Battery is on it, therefore it is a modified creature. And so we attacked in with a 4/2 Menace and a 4/4 Thundering Raiju. Of course, doing that primarily because if our opponent did come up with another land, a black land specifically, they might come up with Meathook Massacre. Some of these decks run that. And Meathook Massacre would only be able to be X equals 3. So this way, our Thundering Raiju would live through it. And now we get to slam another Thundering Raiju and attack. And yeah, we're going to put counters on some different creatures here. The Blade of the Oni is the one that can't be blocked, though. All right, folks, here we are up against KDMD. A little bit of a weird hand. Looks like we're mono red aggro, apparently. I mean, we don't have any black mana, but We don't have black cards, so what the heck? Why worry about it? So we're just going to slam Rabbit Battery and Rabbit Battery. Crash in for 3. Our opponent drops to 16. Currently, race is in our favor. Appearing to be some kind of mono-red matchup. Our opponent goes with Ogre Head Helm. No attacks. Hey, there we go. Finally see some black mana. So we elect to Dragon's Fire. Equip the Rabbit Battery to the Rabbit Battery. Swing in for 5. Our opponent drops to 11. They still have a whole mess of cards in their hand, and we really don't. But alas, it is what it is. Our opponent goes Learning. What on earth? Back in my day, our mono red decks didn't pack a bunch of pack a bunch of learn packages, you know? What the heck's going on there? All right, so back and forth about whether or not to equip the Rabbit Battery. We finally elect not to. Just because we thought it might be valuable to represent maybe a burn spell or something that we don't actually have. But since they don't really have very many, if any, sweepers ever, we elected not to. We do elect to spend the treasure, though, to equip onto the Goldspan Dragon because they have shown us a fair amount of damage-based removal. If they're going to be slinging a bunch of burn spells at our Goldspan Dragon to kill it, might as well make it a little tougher on them, right? So make it just a little bit bigger. Opponent gains 2 life, still in lethal range, though. Opponent goes for Start from Scratch to destroy our Rabbit Battery to make it so we are no longer killing them. They now drop to 1. Sketchy for them. But they do still have 4 cards in hand, one of them being a land. 3 cards in hand now. Etching of Kumano, a creature, but not a blocker. They go ahead, slam a Reinforced Ronin, slam a Reinforced Ronin, slam a Goro-Goro, give it haste, attack for a lot. But not enough. GG, KDMD. GG. Alright, folks, I don't know where to begin pronouncing this opponent's name, but good luck, opponent. So we're going to go with a Mountain and a Kumano faces Kakkazan. And deal opponent face 1 damage. Oh boy, that was a great draw. This is exactly what we wanted. Blade of the Oni comes off the top, and it even gets a counter. Haha, nice. Feels good, man. Although this feels less good. Our opponent appears to be on blue-white control. Yuck. Our opponent, obviously soulless and corrupt, allows us to flip our Etchings of Kumano. That's not true, folks. I'm just giving you a hard time. But allows us to flip our Etchings of Kumano. We crash in for 2, planning to draw a card, but, you know, want to wait until the last possible moment to do it. So we draw another land. Ay-yi-yi. Then we draw another land. Not ideal. Do you have a counter spell for our Thundering Raiju? We hope not. But our hopes are immediately dashed. This person really, really roughing us up here. Inconvenient, but oh boy, how about them apples? Here comes a Goldspan Dragon. No counterspell this time. We're really worried about the stinking Wandering Emperor, but yeah, I was going to say that card is very likely to be able to kill us anyway. So they wisely do it in response to triggers so we can't spend the mana and have it be... We can't get 2 mana out of it, you know? Our opponent, though, plays a Deserted Beach. Or, I'm sorry, a Tranquil Cove to gain a life up to 17. And ay-yi-yi, not looking good. Wandering Emperor goes up to 2 loyalty. Okay. We slam a Rabbit Battery. Etchings of Kumano go at the Wandering Emperor, hoping to try and bait out another Wandering Emperor, honestly. If they've got one, you know, really annoying, but they have the Iganjo. No big deal, we've got a Dragon's Fire to take care of it after all. So our opponent just takes the 1, we play a Hive of the Eye Tyrant and pass the turn back. Opponent goes for Telling. Not great news, but what is good news is that our opponent has less than 4 mana, so no Wandering Emperor. So we put the counter over onto the Rabbit Battery. We were thinking about equipping the Rabbit Battery, and elected not to because we just put the counter on and everything, and then immediately regret our decision. Really wish we had, but whatever, it happens. We do get a Goldspan Dragon off the top, so immediately rewarded for our bad decision making. Feels good, man. Opponent gains another life. That's the 3rd Tranquil Cove. And our opponent goes for Farewell. And Convenient. All right, well, you know what? We still have Hive of the Eye Tyrant, so we're going to crash in. You drop to 4, we play a land, we pass the turn. You now have to deal with our Hive of the Eye Tyrant if you wish to continue playing this video game. Our opponent beholds the multiverse to scry 2, draw 2. We'll see if they pull any miracles off the top. Bottom. 2 more cards to hand. 4 cards remain. 5 mana remain. Plenty of every color. Not a huge concern. Brutal Cathar makes it to the battlefield. This is awkward because our Bloodchief's Thirst doesn't hit it very cleanly, but you know what's not awkward? Kumano faces Kakkazan. So, we're worried they might have a little instant speed removal, which is not great. Turns out they don't. So, boom, Hive of the Eye Tyrant crashes in. Kumano faces Kakkazan? No, it gets negated. Bummer, man. Okay, but they are still at 1 life point. Okay, Angels, but they get greedy and swing in with the Brutal Cathar, folks. So we have Bloodchief's Thirst for an Angel, activate the Hive of the Eye Tyrant, and swing in for the win. GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Baggins. Good luck, Baggins. Our opponent starts with Lair of the Hydra into Ascendant Pack Leader. Not good news. So we go with Rabbit Battery. We're really hoping they trade here. No such luck. Then they go with Ranger Class to make a 2/2 Wolf. I'm beginning to see a little bit of a trend here. We Dragon's Fire it, and then Tovolar comes down. We immediately regret our decision. I think, folks, that was a punt. We were sitting here thinking, well, these Reckless Stormseekers really make it so we want to be able to capitalize. I think that wasn't true. I think what we needed to do was save the Dragon's Fire just in case they had specifically Tovolar so we could have a chance. As it is, they level up Ranger Class, put a counter on Ascendant Pack Leader. We no longer have blocks. We take a bunch of damage. They draw a million cards. They don't even have to cast anything, and now they get to flip their werewolves. As it turns out, they didn't even bother. They're like, no, we're going to beat you with these Ranger Classes. And unfortunately, they're right, you know? So we crash in, trying to make a go of this thing. But the Tovolar flips, Play with Fire happens, our opponent has lethal. Alright, folks, here we are up against Sure Thing. Good luck, Sure Thing. And yeah, I mean, this hand isn't great, but it does pressure our opponent eventually, and we have interaction. So, I mean, we're up against the Sure Thing. So, you know, what more could we want? So Kumano does its thing. Unfortunately, we don't get any counters because we don't have anything to cast. Not great. But at least we still get to Dragon's Fire. Oh, wait. No, we don't. So the mana just goes away, and we regret all of our life decisions. So we play a land and attack with Etchings of Kumano. Suddenly the hand isn't feeling very good anymore. But our opponent is at 17 and we are at 20. We have a creature. They do not. They play a forest. Go blank. No. None of this is doing what we thought. So we discard 2 of those Dragon's Fires. Pass the turn. The good news here, folks, is Thundering Raiju does come down, and suddenly we are putting a lot of pressure on our opponent's face because they haven't advanced the board at all. So our Etchings of Kumano, now a modified creature. So if our opponent kills the Thundering Raiju, that's fine, but Etchings of Kumano is a 3/3. Like, that's still a pretty reasonable attacker. Florian Voldarin Scion comes down. That is interesting because we would like to do the Graveyard Trespasser thing. Yeah, but The thing we were concerned about is that our opponent could potentially have the Snakeskin Veil, and we didn't want to get caught in combat with our opponent having a protection spell. The 4/4 first strike, the first strike part, that's nasty. That's nasty. And of course, again, we were doing all that pre-combat because we were afraid they might. And if they did, we like maybe just attack with Thundering Raiju, for instance. But then they just Snakeskin Veil anyway, and yeah, I mean, things get messy. So now, though, at 10, we say, what the heck, man? You can only block just so many things. If you want to give up your entire board, that's fine. The most tempting creatures to get rid of are the Thundering Raijus, because they're doing direct damage without even bothering with the having to deal combat damage. So our opponent decides to eat a Thundering Raiju. Nope. Eat an Etchings of Kumano. And yeah, these are the blocks we kind of expected. But this still is not great. Our opponent's at 1, we have 2 Thundering Raijus. All we have to do is declare attacks. So now they have to handle both Thundering Raijus, or they are in a lot of trouble. Of course, only if... Okay. Alright, folks. Here we are up against Blade Rainer. Good luck, Blade Rainer. Really awkward hand. This is the good old-fashioned what's magic hand. So we're just gonna try and do a whole lot of nothing forever. But no. We get Kumano faces Kakkazan. So suddenly our hand is completely bailed out. Immediately rewarded for bad decision making. You got to love it. We make a land drop, play a Reckless Stormseeker that gets a counter. It becomes a 4/4 with haste. Love it. Alright. Opponent, take your card for the turn. And plays the land Trellasara. Inconvenient. Alright. Well, now we get a land. And gotta decide what to do. We are going to reveal the dragon. There is giving up some amount of information there, but our opponent might be able to gain life. It would be odd, but don't want to take that chance. So we spread out the buffs just in case our opponent has some kind of interaction. Crash in, our opponent drops to 10. Well, they have another life gain innkeeper. Righteous Valkyrie. We've already seen this song and dance get played. This does not end well for us. So we need to have something go different this game. Well, this game, we were actually making land drops. And Bloodchief's Thirst coming in clutch. So we are now able to crash in yet again. Opponent drops to 7. And we've got a Goldspan Dragon ready to come down. Well, shoot, man. They've got another Righteous Valkyrie. Ay. We dropped to 17. All right. We're not fooling around. Yep. Make 2 4-power creatures and attack. Opponent takes it down to 1. And you know what we've got time for? Kumano faces Kakkazan. GG, Blade Rainer. GG. All right, folks, we are back. And boy, those were some wild games. The deck did fine. I would not say it was just absolutely crushing it, but we did win more games than we lost, so you can't really complain. Admittedly, this was just a play queue because that's where I take viewer decks. I never want to put extra pressure on somebody's deck. You know, you build your deck for fun and you want to show it off. That's fine. That's an okay thing to do. I wouldn't want, you know, it's obvious Poseidenj here was trying to build a relatively competitive deck, if not quite competitive, and that's fine. But I wouldn't want to hurt Poseidenj's feelings if maybe I misread the situation. So, again, just a play queue for the record. That said, it was pretty good. We did really get aggressive and punish our opponents somewhat. So, on that front, I think it was great. I would say we kind of struggled a little bit sometimes as far as deck identity. We really want to be aggressive, but we're running 24 lands and 2 MDFCs. So we're essentially running 26 lands because we need to get to Goldspan Dragon on time, which is probably accurate. We do want to do that. We're going to need Goldspan Dragon to finish the deal. But I do want to stress, we very rarely have enough mana to actively be an Agadeem's Awakening deck. It's a fine card to have, and I'm not slamming it. I'm just saying, this is almost exclusively just land. It's land with bonus text. Shatterskull Smashing, we have a little more opportunity to take advantage of, but it's still, it takes a lot of mana. This is at least a 4-mana spell, you know, for it to do anything, really, typically. So it's a slow removal spell. So it's more often than not also a land. So we're essentially a 26 land aggro deck. That's a commitment, right? It's also true that we're getting all this extra, we have all these 26 lands, trying to get up to just 4 drops and 4 5 drops. They're very good ones and kind of the keys to the deck. So we do want to do that. But what else might we want to do? And, you know, admittedly, it's also true that we're making these treasures that we can't always spend, right? So looking at trying to rectify that potential problem, I want to stress we won more games than we lost. So this is relatively nitpicky. Take the advice or leave the advice. It is what it is. I would look at maybe improving our 4-drop slot, I think. And I have a couple of suggestions of potential directions you might go. First and foremost, I think might be Hagramauling and actually drop a land or 2. We could become a 22-land deck, I think, if we kept our Shatterskull Smashings and Agadeem's Awakening. And just, you know, maybe cut 2 lands, just add 2 Hagramaulings. So suddenly we've got more interaction and something to do with our mana, but we're still a 26-land deck then. We do give up a little bit of equity in that some of them are tapped lands. But if that's the only change we make, then I still think our curve is good enough that just these can kind of fit in where they want. You know, we also have varying mana costs with the Blade of the Oni, things like that, so we can either be equipping or activating things like that as, you know, to fill in the curve if the curve does get awkward. The other ones I might bring up are just generically strong 4-drops. Bloodline or Bloodvial Purveyor gives our opponent a lot of blood, which is not always great. They can really find ways of taking advantage of that, but it's also true that if this comes off the top deck later, it's a 4-mana 5/6 flying trample. This blocks everything in the format and attacks really good, especially if we're able to be reconfiguring and whatnot, right? Or throwing counters on it and things. So this, especially if it's able to gain haste and become a 6-power attacker, good lord, that's very strong. And I think it kind of fits what this deck is trying to do. This is only going to be reasonable in a deck that wants to end the game pretty quickly, but still be kind of mid-rangey. As it turns out, that's exactly what this deck is trying to do, right? So I'm not saying a lot of these, maybe at most like 2 of whatever these 4-drops are we decide to go with, but maybe worth considering because of what it is. Similarly, Moonveil Region. We don't really want to be discarding, you know, we don't have multicolored spells, so we're only ever casting a spell. We don't really want to discard 3 cards to draw 1 very often or whatever. But whenever you cast a spell, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw a card for each of that spell's colors. If we're empty-handed, which this deck can get empty-handed pretty quickly, and we're just playing off the top of our deck, we discard 0 cards, draw a brand new card. So if just as a 1 or 2 of, again, it could be a great way of refilling our hand later on in the game, because by the time we get up to here, we already went over. We have access to lots and lots of mana. We should be hitting our land drop very regularly, at least in the current configuration, and then we should be deploying our hand quickly. And we are pressuring our opponent's life total, so I think this might be another great place for Moonveil Region. Last but certainly not least is one you might go, wait a minute, I forgot that was a card. 4/3 Flying Lifelink for 4 is fine, but not amazing. The Boast is what you typically deck this for. Pay 2. Sacrifice a creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. This is interesting here because we should have 1 or 2 extra, you know, rabbit batteries or Kumano creatures left behind, things like that. We should have an extra creature or 2 that we could sacrifice if we need to for the Boast, but this card I think is a little bit underplayed in decks right now because it has hexproof from planeswalkers. Every stinking game, it feels like you are forced to play around the you know, Scourge of the 4-mana slot, and our brand new Settler Wreckage, the Emperor, right? But the fact that Eradicator Valkyrie has hexproof from Planeswalkers means, and flying, means that it's going to be very, very difficult for your opponent to properly pressure it in the way that they want. This will make your opponent play in ways that maybe they're just not ready to play. It's also true that the lifelink is very, very good against the other kind of style decks that are readily seeing play right now, that might want to try and race you, right? The key thing that I would caution you about this card on is if we don't get our Thundering Raijus, and we don't cast it on a Kumano turn where we can put counters on it, and we don't put Rabbit Battery on it, the 3rd toughness is really, really annoying because it will die to things like Dragon's Fire and all that kind of thing. It also trades very poorly with Elite Spellbinders and things because it's a 3-mana card that interacts with you. You cast your 4-mana card and you just can't really attack anymore. So those things are annoying. If you grow it just a little bit, though, a lot of that is irrelevant. So I would maybe explore those as potential spots for upgrade. As far as cards you might cut, the Goro-Goro literally never did anything any game we drew it. Part of that was we didn't see it that often. I didn't get to show you guys all the games, just because 2 of them were very, very uneventful losses, and then there were several against the same deck over and over and over. We ended up facing the same deck like 4 times, and I try not to do that because I want entertaining games. So when we saw it, it was pretty uneventful. We never even once got to make a 5/5. I understand what this deck is, or this card is trying to do, and I wanted it to do the thing. I was actually trying to play towards doing that thing. Never got to do it. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that I couldn't make it do it. So if we're gonna pull 2 cards to get one of those, I'm thinking maybe 1 Goro-Goro, 1 Kumano potentially, and you know, make considerations there. It's also, again, possible we want to revisit the mana base. Maybe we go down to 25 lands by just pulling an Agadeem's Awakening, and that opens up another space as well, just to prevent the flooding situation. But whatever, I think the deck was fine, and we had a great time playing it. So, done nitpicking. It was a lot of fun, and thank you, Poseidenj, for your submission. I wish you all a fantastic day, and I will catch you next time.